day everyone, I am your speaker for today, Maxine Juangco, with my fellow speakers Junsay and Gunnarlyn Lipura, and we are bound to tackle realism and social realism, some artists and their paintings. In today's presentation, we are going to explain precisely the characteristics of these, the influence of its rise and fall.
And we are also going to elaborate the cultural significance of each in the major works presented, and as well as the major personalities in the period.
Let's start off with realism. Now, how do we define this period, Jake and Gunnarlyn?
So, the term realism was coined by the French novelist named Champlery. In practice, realistic art, artists use realistic pictures or portrait to show to the audience the reality of the society that they inhabit. They use art to spread the message that they want to acquire to the people and to make a movement to do the things that they think is right to make the world be a better place to live.
There are also artworks that are famous and added as its trademark. Realism can be known through its creative characteristics such as the accuracy, how detailed the artwork is, and the unembellished depiction of nature of contemporary life.
That was interesting to hear. To deepen our knowledge, here are some other facts.
In this period, the way people created their art is to depict what they see and what is around them, and not add any forms of fiction or emotion. Only the accurate depiction of what can be seen by the eye. Realism can be found in different civilizations like in ancient Hellenistic Greek. In this period, people who are affiliated with this movement are called realists or naturalists, whom reject romanticism because it contrasts to realism. Romanticism emphasizes emotion, whereas realism uses a more fluid-like style of painting, instead of harsh and rough brush strokes. The artwork produced in realism focuses on accuracy, lighting and timing, and the depiction of everyday lives of the lower class.
That's wonderful. Now what about the art movement in this period, Jake?
In this period, the art movement began in 1840s to 1880s. Realism was an artistic movement that developed in France during the 1848 revolution. Realists rejected Romanticism, which had ruled French writing and art since the early 19th century. Now, realism revolved against the extraordinary subject matter and the exaggerated emotionalism and dramatization of romantic movement.
After the revolution, when the realism movement flourished in France, its influences reached out beyond the said country and reached Russia. One important realist movement that happened in Russia is called the Perevizniki, or the Wanderers group that formed in the year 1860. In this period, people began to have a more sense of their surroundings. They also developed an awareness of those people in the lower class, those who struggle with daily expenses. Before, people who eat potatoes are considered poor, so that is why majority of their artworks are of people who work in fields of potatoes.
Moving on to the importance of realism movement. Even before, realism began as a coherent trend in the 1840s. In the past, realism exposed social injustices or the problem in the society, the abuse of the government, and the people who has the power abuse their own fellow people.
Through realism art, people are able to gain a knowledge about their rights, and it's the artist's way to gain people to support his aim to take down those people who don't deserve their high position, because that time they can expose themselves that they are against to the government.
Surely that's still beneficial until today. Now, here are some major works in this period.
There are many notable artists of this period, including Gustave Courbet and his work entitled Burial at Ornans, which shows a painting of a funeral in his old town. Courbet is the leader of the realism movement, for he rejected the style of classicism of traditional paintings. In Burial at Ornans, he underlines the importance and dignity of ordinary life and death. Another notable artist in this period is Jean-Francois Millet. He is known to be one of the founders of the famous Barbizon School of France, where different styles of classical painting transitioned to realism or naturalism painting. One of his famous paintings is called the Angelus, which depicts two peasants bowing down and praying as the bell rang while in a field of potatoes.
That will be all for realism period. What we should put in our mind that the modern art are started in this period. The artworks that kept in places were safe and worth are still appreciated. We will not able to forget the amazing artists that show their talents and explain message through a masterpiece. Now, let's move on. Let's move to the next topic, which is the social realism period.
Hi, I'm Alexandra, and we will be discussing social realism with my partner, Christine Joy Pagaduan. So what is social realism?
Social realism is the term used for work produced by painters, printmakers, photographers, writers, and filmmakers that aims to draw attention about the real socio-political conditions of the working class. It represents daily life in a true-to-life manner and avoids the fiction and supernatural elements of an artwork.
It is also a movement that flourished between the two world wars in response to the social and political turmoil and hardships of the period. Artists turned to realism as a way of making art easily accessible and legible to the wider public, often portraying their subjects, including well-known figures and anonymous everyday workers, as heroic symbols of persistence and strength in the face of adversity.
Social realism started after the Mexican Revolution that happened in the year 1910, in which the social realism in the United States was inspired because of Muralists. But who started social realism? His name is Ben Shahn. He's an American social realist and was one of the two modern art movements with a left-wing character, the other being Soviet, whom inspired social realism. It evolved out of the character Ashcan urban art movement led by Robert Henry. Shahn was involved in photography as well as painting. Like many other realist artists at the time, he depicted the victims of miscarriages of justice. He became well known in the early 1930s for his paintings depicting the trial, imprisonment, and execution of Italian immigrants Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti.
That was interesting to hear. How about you, Henry? Do you have any idea what influenced its rise as its demise or fall?
The social realism movement started during the 1920s to 1930s so that artists could draw attention to the real situation of politics. In the year 1960, social realism became unpopular because artists were forced to be in prison or death. The reason was crossing the line of creating artwork that illustrates political issues of leaders and the making of cultural icons. How about you? Do you know its cultural significance?
Social realism was used during the Great Depression in the United States in the 1930s, as it illustrates how an industry has evolved, and artists use this movement to express through art about the current situation about social and economy. They use this movement to help people gain awareness about issues that surrounds them, be it political or about the poor laborers.
Okay, now I will share some of the major works and key personalities in the social realism era. Ben Shahn, in his arts, he focuses on social and political justice to illustrate social realism. For example is the Red Stairway from 1944. That illustrates the horror that happened in World War II. Doris Lee's Thanksgiving from 1935. This shows a couple of maids preparing the Thanksgiving dinner while taking care of the children. Doris Lee is a successful American female artist during the 1930s, and her artwork earned the Logan Prize Fund from the Arts Institute of Chicago. Thank you for listening to us. We do hope that you understood and learned something about realism and social realism and caught your own principle about it. We are grateful for hearing us out. Have a great day, everyone!